Welcome to another video, Pro Political Talk here. Today is April 2nd, 2021, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 2024 presidential election and looking at a matchup that, again, is one of the most rumored matchups, again, considering how the last election turned out with President Biden beating out then President Donald Trump. So for this video, we're going to be taking into account several things. And these things include President Trump's standing currently with the American public. It also takes into account how Biden is doing during his presidency. And I would say for these election scenarios, we're going to look at these as how could the country view this election by 2024. So again, before we get started and making some projections, please remember to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. So let's get started. So, looking at this, again, we're using our 2024 electoral map, which again has shifted some of the electoral results since the 2012, 16, and 20 elections. So you're going to see some states have gained electoral votes, most notably Texas and Florida, and some that have lost, like California and New York. So that is the first thing to take into account. So let's start off by calling the safe states for Biden. So these are states that, regardless of how this next couple of years go on for Biden, if administration comes in having a very strong midterm, being able to go and do several projects in the House and the Senate, and they're able to overcome the challenges in legislation that they have with people like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, that are coming in and giving them a very big challenge. If they have a good midterm and they have a good season of sorts, they're going to be able to overcome those challenges. And I think that these are going to be the states that, regardless of how the election turns out, these are states that are probably going to end up being safe. Probably New Mexico as well, although the current things that are occurring in the border, which I'm going to be making a video about that soon, this might affect New Mexico. But again, it's a state that has become very, very democratic over the years, and as the time progresses, a lot of more immigrants are getting the right to vote through naturalization. A lot of different things, demographic changes, people just moving away from other cities, coming to New Mexico. These things just really and that's the state I was missing, New York, that those demographic changes really are important and they really come into consideration. So New Mexico, I would really put it in the it could be either likely, which would be states that go by less than 15%. However, I think it's more likely than not that it's going to be in the safe margin come 2024. As for the Republican Party, they're going to have a group of states that, have their safe margins. Montana, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska except the 2nd district. That's also very important to note. This general Bible Belt is probably going to end up being very Republican come 2024. And I think there's certain states that, might be in the safe column by then. Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia. Although these states have a possibility of getting a little bit tighter, just looking at the current trends with things the Biden administration is doing and how popular Donald Trump is in these states, I think it would be an easy thing for the Republicans to win. And as we can see here, Iowa was a state that was supposedly very close. The polls, and remember, this is another thing to note. When we get to 2024 and start getting polling data, which some polling data we're starting to get, and it's more about the primaries, really, there is a point where we can't trust the polls. The polls and the pundits were very off with this 2020 election in Ohio. So I think that kind of also shows that a lot of people really want President Trump again reelected in those states, which for the Republican Party is a good thing considering they are on a very thin rope everywhere else in the country. They're on a very thin rope in Texas, in Georgia, in Arizona, places where they should be winning by safe margins, that is not the case anymore. So that's something that we really have to take into consideration. So I think generally speaking, these would be all the states that would be in the safe Republican column. I think the most notable omissions for that would be the state of South Carolina and the state of Alaska. And those are states that are going to end up maybe winding down a little bit. And one big trend that we also have to take into consideration is college educated voters flooding all of these southern states, notably Texas, notably Florida. That, you know, the pandemic caused a geographic bubble to burst, in the sense that people, for example, that were liberal maybe and lived in up there in New York, or they lived in California, they're leaving because of the pandemic, and that is going to cause a shift in the electorate for the years to come. So we're gonna see that, and I'm going to talk about those shifts in this video. So these would be the states that would be safe for both parties. And now let's talk about the likely states that would go from anywhere from 5 to 15% for a party or the other. So I would say states like Nevada, states like Colorado. I would say at this point states like maybe New Hampshire, states like Michigan. I would say these states are going to end up going to Biden by a margin of 5 to 15%, as well as the state of Minnesota. Who cannot forget Minnesota? So looking at these states, I think that it's very important to note these states, one, have been voting very consistently Democratic, and it's very important to note that, because ultimately those trends and those trends, not only are they strong, they're gonna continue to strengthen. Biden has proved to be popular in these states, and a lot of Biden's early policies have been really affected these states. And if anything, a lot of the policies that Biden has implemented that might get him into hot water would be down here. However, in the other sense, Donald Trump is not really that popular in these states. Out of the states in the Rust Belt, Minnesota and Michigan were furthest to the left during the election. That is something that's notable. And with Biden in office and, you know, at least promising or taking some action, he's probably going to be able to get those states and strengthen them. Nevada and Colorado have been states that have been shifting left for years. The Republicans are very unlikely they're going to win here unless Biden has some sort of catastrophic presidency to some levels that we have not seen before, which I am very doubtful that something like that will happen. I would say that Biden, by the end of his term, or by the time of this election, Biden's going to be somewhat popular. I would say he would be in the high 40s, mid, like maybe low to high 40s, so anywhere in the 40s approval rating, which, in recent terms, based on Donald Trump's approval rating and those things, it's good, but that's a thing to consider. Democrats, while they might have higher approval ratings, they have a big trouble winning elections, but I think these states are pretty safe. As for the Republicans, again, states like Alaska, states like South Carolina, these states are states that are narrowing down based on the demographic changes, with African American vote in South Carolina and college educating vote flocking in the state of South Carolina and a lot of the regions of the South. And then in Alaska, you just have a lot of very liberal Republicans. And, you know, ultimately what ends up happening is that these people do not like Donald Trump. Donald Trump's not that popular. And, you know, especially after the riots at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021, we can probably say that, you know, Trump, especially with those liberal Republicans that might have given Trump a chance in 2016, might have given Trump a chance in 2020, a lot of those voters are gone because you know, what Trump did in, you know, kind of getting with those the party and being pretty much inciting somewhat to some extent and being blamed for the riots at the Capitol, that's really gonna hurt him, especially with those liberal Republicans. Everything else on this map is really on the playing field. I think Texas is going to get extremely, extremely close. We're seeing mass migration from states like California into Texas for their technology, which again, college-educated voters. Arizona is going to be a lot closer. Florida is probably going to be in the 2020 level, but we're going to talk about that now. We're going to talk about our lean states for each party. So lean states are states that go by more than 1.5%, but less than 5%. So for the Democrats, I think they're going to see states like I think that we're gonna see Nebraska again being lean Democrat in its second district. Biden won here, and I think Trump wasn't really that popular in that district. Is turns out to be a little bit more liberal, and just with Biden's administration, I would say that his policies are somewhat popular there because, Biden's policies are really affecting rural voters, but not to the level that somewhere like Nebraska's second feels it, because it's a very urban district. So that's something to keep in mind. So that would be one of the places I think the Democrats would fare off well. I think another one of those places would be the state of Wisconsin. Although this is very tight, I would say that this is one of those states that I would really consider giving to Trump. However, the Republicans here are on a very, very thin rope. And, as Biden does certain things with the economy from COVID rises. And that's another thing to keep in mind. Come 2024, I really do not think people are going to still be thinking about COVID as a main issue. Of course, it's a thing that impacted everyone's life for over 4 years at that point, because it's already 2021 and we're midway through 2021. It's been a year from the pandemic and we still haven't resolved everything. However, I think the economy is going to be strong because the economy, so that's going to be one of the things. But then people are going to start focusing on other things. The thing in the border, that's really going to affect Biden, because that's going to be a long-term policy. With COVID-19, it's pretty much really short-term, making people happy. That might help the Democrats for the midterms. However, come 2024, that message of COVID might have been exhausted. So I think come in 2020 and 2024, we're going to see states like Wisconsin with other policies that really don't affect him. Biden can narrowly win there. Now, as for the Republicans, I think states like Texas are going to be in the lean column. States like Florida, states like North Carolina. And, I think Arizona might have a chance of going back to the lean column. Why? I want to notice a couple trends here. So these states are Sunbelt states, and the Sunbelt, that I should have used that term before. The Sunbelt is what's it's having a lot of demographic changes, because of people moving out of these blue states. So I think that, first of all, that's going to have somewhat of an impact. However, some of Biden's policies are proving not to be that popular, especially among some Hispanic groups. So, for example, Florida, that was a big example. I think here Trump is going to be able to retain some of his voters, even after the insurrection of the Capitol, which I'm not really sure of how big of an impact the insurrection is going to have. It's definitely gonna carry some weight for Trump, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. So with that, I think in Florida, enough to bring him down completely. In Florida, I think he's going to be able to return some of he's very popular in Florida even still. And, Ron DeSantis is also popular. So the Republicans are generally very popular right now. In Texas, here's the thing. In Texas, the border and the migrant situation is really going to hurt Biden. Again, long-term policy, that's probably going to be something that people are going to be thinking about. And I don't know if you guys remember, back in 2018, that migrant caravan was really what saved Donald Trump and the Republicans during the midterm elections from a complete blowout. Those immigration policies really helped them out in some Texan districts. And I think ultimately, in Texas and Arizona, that might be a saving grace for Trump, being able to at least even win a little bit higher. So that's what we see there. And in North Carolina, I think this is one of those districts that's very hard to tell, because you have a lot of African American population, which have been really turning out for Democrats in recent years at higher levels like never seen before. Thanks to people like Stacey Abrams, thanks to people in North Carolina and Georgia, especially Georgia, where you have 2 Democratic senators now, which never you would have thought that you would get Democrat in Georgia, at least in recent terms. So, with Warnock and Ossoff. So those trends are really, really helping out the Democrats. However, I think that the populations in the state of North Carolina really might be turning out for Republicans. Some of Biden's policies might affect them. And I think just generally, one of the things that I have not talked about is the increase of prices of everything, especially oil. Oil and gas is extremely expensive. I want you to go out to your nearest gas station. Next time you go put gas on your car, if you do have a car, I want you to see gas prices. They are through the roof. Now, I think for a lot of voters, that might really come into the decision. And especially in states where gas is not that cheap, it's going to be very, very, very hurtful for the Biden administration, because all of this is pretty much a Biden effect, because he stopped the oil farming in the state of New Mexico. All these things. So that's something that we really have to see. The last two states, I think, or last three states, I think, are going to be really close. I think Maine's 2nd district is going to go up for the Democrats. I do think that in the state of Georgia, I think that maybe Donald Trump could come back, although I think Biden may narrowly end up winning that state. And in Pennsylvania, I think, again, Biden is narrowly going to take that home seat of his. Overall, this election in 2024, I expect it to be a closer race than people think. I could just feel it right now based on, one, the legislative troubles Biden is having. He's really going to have nothing on his resume, nothing to defend. So that's going to be something that's going to be hard for him. However, I think with COVID leadership and things like that, that's going to be some of his pros. For Trump, he's going to have that baggage from his first presidency. However, I think a lot of the voters in these states are really going to end up, coming out for him. So this is what I think the final electoral map for this race is going to be. 247 for Trump and Pence, while 291 for Biden and Harris. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. Hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.